What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. In the complex world of international politics, certain events can shake up everyday lives of regular people. One such event is the Kursk operation of August 24, which stands out as the most significant news story in Russia today. Despite the vast differences in political ideologies and values that may separate us, the magnitude of this event is undeniable. Acting governor of Kursk region Alexei Smirnov has reported that around 2,000 Russians found themselves stranded in areas now under Ukrainian control, a number that many believe could be a very conservative estimate. While Smirnov reports that 28 towns and villages have been overtaken, Ukrainian forces on the other hand claim to have seized nearly 100 localities, painting a picture of a rapidly escalating situation. This unprecedented crisis demands our attention, as it marks a significant and troubling chapter in modern Russian history. Today, we will dive deep into the events surrounding the Kursk operation, the alarming silence from Russian leadership, and the broader implications for the future of the nation. The ongoing situation in the Kursk region represents an unparalleled crisis in the history of modern Russia. For the first time since the end of the Second World War, a portion of Russian territory is under the control of a foreign military power. This situation is far more severe than the conflicts in Chechnya, where, despite the intense violence, control was never established by the regular forces of another state. The Ukrainian military's presence in the Kursk region has resulted in a scenario where thousands of Russian citizens are now living under the authority of a foreign military administration, a reality that was unthinkable just a few years or even months ago. The human cost of this crisis is staggering. Official reports suggest that over 120,000 Russians have already fled the region, becoming refugees within their own country. This number is likely to continue rising as the conflict drags on, creating a humanitarian disaster of significant proportions. Furthermore, there are troubling reports that a considerable number of Russian conscripts have been captured by Ukrainian forces, with the official count possibly being much lower than the actual number. The true scale of this crisis remains obscured, with the majority of information coming from Ukrainian sources. This includes videos and statements from the Ukrainian military which show both sides of the very same story. Either elderly residents receiving food rations and, in some cases unfortunately, being mocked by Ukrainian soldiers, a grim testament to the harsh realities faced by those left behind. The magnitude of the Kursk crisis is difficult to overstate. It is an event that not only affects the lives of those directly involved, but also has far-reaching implications for the entire nation. The fact that such significant portion of Russian territory is under foreign control is a clear indicator of the severe challenges facing the country. Despite this, the response from the Russian government has been remarkably quiet, raising questions about its ability or even willingness to address the crisis itself. Throughout the duration of this conflict, the Russian public has been consistently advised to rely solely on official sources for information. Blogs, Telegram channels, regardless of their stance on the war, have been deemed unreliable. Yet, when we turn to the most official source of them all, the Kremlin's own website, the glaring absence of substantial coverage on the Kursk crisis is both shocking and simply unbelievable. According to the Kremlin's official portal, President Putin's most notable activities during the critical days of August 20th and 21st included meeting with the Premier of the State Council of China, Li Qiang, visit to a children's clinical center, visit to Chechnya, meeting with mothers of Beslan, and Nikolai Patrushev, ensuring Russia's national interest in the Arctic. The events unfolding in Kursk, which have thrown the region into chaos, were mentioned only briefly, buried within the context of routine diplomatic activities. Nothing serious is happening there, right? For a nation in distress, the silence from its leadership is particularly disturbing. If one were to rely exclusively on the Kremlin's website for information, they might be led to believe that the crisis in Kursk is merely one of many minor emergencies, no more significant than a natural disaster or a local infrastructure failure. These topics, while important in their own right, seem almost trivial in the face of the unfolding crisis in Kursk. Even the Russian government's official website, where one might expect to find more detailed and urgent coverage, only once briefly mentions the events in Kursk, saying that the government supports the creation of digital platforms where residents of Kursk can look for help. And that's it. They just support the initiative. Nothing more than that. Instead, the main topics are Russian expedition on African continent, creating hiking trails in the Far East, and 21 million Russian families improving their living conditions since 2019. Which exactly families they're talking about? Nobody knows. The Kursk situation, while acknowledged, was treated as a secondary concern, one among many issues that the government must manage. This lack of urgency is deeply troubling, as it suggests a disconnect between the government's priorities and the dire realities. As the Ukrainian military continues to solidify its control over significant portions of the Kursk region, one might expect the Russian government to adopt a more proactive and forceful stance. The invasion of Russian territory by a foreign power is an event that, under normal circumstances, would prompt a swift and decisive response. However, the reaction from the Kremlin and the cabinet has been anything but decisive. Thousands of Russian citizens are now either under occupation or have become refugees, and the official figures, conservative as they may be, only hint at a crisis that is kind of unfolding in Kursk. The response from the Russian government, however, has been muted at best. While it is understandable that the day-to-day functions of the government must continue, the lack of a coordinated and forceful response to what amounts to a foreign invasion of Russian soil is deeply once again concerning. The Russian government's newspaper, for example, Российская газета, mentions the events in Kursk a little bit more. Just a little bit. Specifically, that upcoming elections in Kursk will be delayed due to circumstances. Online stores will provide discounts for the residents of Kursk region. Wow. And that Ukrainian army started retreating from Kursk region for the third time in the last 2 hours, at least. The top news selected by the editor-in-chief is about the potential law about limiting how loud motorcycles can be. Well, can't disagree with this one. Pretty important problem of the state, right? But this lack of acknowledgement from the highest levels of government raises serious questions about the leadership priorities and their commitment to addressing the crisis. I mean, imagine yourself. You have foreign country soldiers literally in your neighborhood. You hear sounds of war every day, and your government tells you that nothing serious is happening, stop overreacting, and that your city continues to live its normal life. How absurd is this? This apparent indifference from Russia's leadership is not only troubling in the immediate context, but also speaks to a deeper issue within the Russian political system. The lack of a clear and forceful response to the Kursk crisis suggests that a government that is either out of touch with reality or in disbelief, choosing to downplay the significance of the events. In either case, the implications for Russia's future are profound, as the government's inaction could lead to a further erosion of public trust and confidence in the leadership. The silence from Russia's leadership, particularly from President Putin, is both conspicuous and concerning. In a political system that is highly centralized around a single figure, the absence of a decisive and public response to the crisis in Kursk is a glaring omission. President Putin has long portrayed himself as a protector of the Russian interests, both domestically and on the global stage. Yet, as the Kursk region faces one of the most significant challenges in recent history, his focus appears to be somewhere else. engage in international diplomacy and domestic initiatives that, while important, do not address the immediate needs of the Russian people in this critical moment. This silence is not only merely a matter of public relations, it reflects a deeper issue within the Russian political system. The lack of accountability and responsibility at the highest levels of government is becoming increasingly apparent as the crisis unfolds. The president's reluctance to address the nation directly about the events in Kursk is indicative of a leadership that is either unwilling or unable to confront the realities of this situation. The current situation is very similar of Russia's history in the early 20th century, when the country was ruled by an absolute monarch who was similarly insulated from criticism and responsibility. The disastrous Russian-Japanese War, which saw the destruction of the Russian Navy and the humiliating defeat, led to widespread dissatisfaction with the monarchy. The parallels with today's events are striking, as the Kursk Crisis threatens to have a similar effect, revealing the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of a leadership that is increasingly out of step with the needs and concerns of its own people. The Kursk crisis is not just a regional issue, it is a national catastrophe that demands a robust and coordinated response from the highest levels of government. The fact that this response has been so muted raises serious concerns about the state of Russia's leadership and the direction in which the country is headed. In the face of a foreign occupation and the displacement of thousands of Russian citizens, the government's failure to act decisively is not just a political misstep. It is a moral failing that could have profound implications for the future of the nation. It is clear that this is a moment of crisis not only for the people of Kursk, but for the entire Russian state. The silence from the Kremlin, the lack of urgency from the cabinet, and the muted coverage in state media, all these point to a leadership that is failing to rise to the occasion. In the face of a foreign occupation and the displacement of thousands of Russian citizens, the government has a responsibility to act decisively, to say the least, transparently, and with a sense of urgency. Yet, the response so far has been one of denial, deflection, and the alarming detachment from the realities of the ground. The Kursk crisis is a critical test of Russia's leadership, and the stakes could not be higher for them. As history has shown, a government's failure to address the needs and concerns of its people in times of crisis can have far-reaching consequences, both politically and socially. The people of Kursk, and indeed all Russians, deserve nothing less than a government that is responsive, responsible, and committed to their well-being. The Kursk crisis once again serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of political power and the importance of leadership that is both accountable and attuned to the needs of the nation. The lessons of history are clear, and it is up to Russia's leaders to decide whether they will heed them or repeat the mistakes of the past. So guys, you choose. And guys, I've been reading a lot of comments from you, and I do see that many of you are missing our ridiculous Russian propaganda segment. So as a test, I decided to include one chapter of this ridiculous Russian propaganda on our Patreon video, so if you want to continue watching, and this is also a very good way to support my work, please go ahead and check my Patreon, the link is down below, and let me know down below in the comments if you want to continue receiving Russian propaganda in this way or not, or if we should stay to completely serious topics. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel if this video was interesting, informative or both, and see you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims are resolve they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.